My name is Daniel. If someone had asked me a year ago whether I trusted my wife, I would have laughed at the question. Of course I trusted her. Emily and I had been married for 8 years. We weren't one of those couples who constantly posted romantic photos online or bragged about their relationship. We were just normal. At least that's what I thought. Emily worked as a driving instructor. She loved her job. Every morning she would leave the house before 8, carrying a large coffee mug and her tablet. She taught nervous teenagers, adults who had failed their driving tests 3 times, and even elderly people who wanted to regain confidence behind the wheel. She was patient, calm, the kind of woman who could sit next to a terrified student and somehow make them believe they could drive. Everyone liked her. Our neighbors liked her. Her students liked her. Even my mother liked her, and that was saying something. For years, everything seemed fine. We lived in a small house outside the city. We had a golden retriever named Max. We watched movies on Friday nights and ordered takeout on Sundays. Nothing exciting, nothing dramatic, just life. Then things started changing. At first, I didn't notice. Most husbands probably wouldn't. Emily began spending more time at work. New students, she would say. Driving test season. Someone failed again, so I have extra lessons. All reasonable explanations. I never questioned them. Why would I? One evening, she came home almost 2 hours later than usual. I was making dinner when she walked through the door. Long day? I asked. She smiled. 12 lessons. 12? Yeah, I'm exhausted. She kissed my cheek and disappeared upstairs. I remember looking at her for a second. Something felt strange. Not wrong, just different. But I ignored it. Over the next few weeks, similar things happened. Late evenings. Phone calls she took outside. Messages she quickly closed when I walked into the room. Again, nothing concrete. Nothing that screamed, affair. Just enough to make me uncomfortable. One night, I mentioned it. Everything okay? Emily looked up from her phone. What do you mean? You've seemed distracted lately. She smiled. I'm just tired. Work? Work. That was the end of the conversation. Or at least it should have been. A month later, I found the video. Completely by accident. It happened on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Emily was working. I was cleaning the garage. The garage had become a graveyard for old electronics, forgotten boxes, and random junk we promised ourselves we'd organize one day. That day finally came. I found an old cardboard box filled with cables, hard drives, and flash drives. Most of them were useless. Then I found a small black USB stick. No label, no markings, just a plain flash drive. I assumed it belonged to me. I took it inside and plugged it into my laptop. There were only 3 files, 2 PDFs, and 1 video. The file name was strange. Just numbers. No description. No date. Nothing. I clicked it. At first, I thought it was corrupted. The image shook for several seconds. The camera seemed hidden. Then the picture stabilized. I saw the inside of a car, a driving school car. I immediately recognized it. Emily's car, the white sedan she used for lessons. My stomach tightened. Maybe it was an old lesson recording. Some instructors recorded sessions for training purposes. That made sense, at least for the first 10 seconds. Then I saw Emily. The camera angle was strange. It looked like someone had placed a phone near the dashboard. Emily was sitting in the driver's seat. She wasn't teaching. She wasn't driving. She was talking to someone. A man. Only part of his face was visible. I couldn't see him clearly. The quality wasn't great, but I immediately noticed one thing. He wasn't one of her students. He looked older, confident, relaxed. The kind of person who acted like he belonged there. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. The same feeling you get when your brain notices danger before your heart catches up. I kept watching. The conversation continued. The audio was weak. Rain hit the windshield. Traffic passed outside. I could only catch fragments. Then Emily laughed. Not her polite laugh. Not the laugh she used with clients. Her real laugh. The one she used with me. Or used to. The man said something. She touched his arm. My heartbeat doubled. I leaned closer to the screen. Maybe there was another explanation. Maybe they were friends. Maybe. Then he kissed her. Everything inside me froze. I stared at the laptop. My eyes refused to blink. The kiss lasted only a few seconds, but it felt like hours. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. The video continued. Emily looked around nervously. The man smiled. She smiled back. Then the recording ended, just like that. 38 seconds. 38 seconds that destroyed 8 years of marriage. I sat there, in silence. The rain outside seemed louder. My hands felt cold. I replayed the video, again, and again, and again. Each time hoping I had misunderstood. Each time seeing the same thing. The same car. The same woman. My wife. The same man. Eventually, I paused the video. I stared at the frozen frame. The man's face was partially visible. Black, maybe mid-30s. Athletic build, short hair. That was all I could tell. I searched the flash drive. Nothing else. No photos. No names. No clues. Just the video. I checked the file details. No useful information. The creation date had been removed. I sat back in my chair. Questions flooded my mind. Who was he? When had this happened? How long had it been going on? Why was the video on this flash drive? Who recorded it? Most importantly, did Emily know the video existed? I looked toward the front door. She would be home in 3 hours. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately. Another part wanted answers first. I chose answers. That decision would change everything, because the deeper I dug into the mystery, the stranger it became. The video wasn't the only secret Emily had been hiding, not even close. And before the week was over, I would discover that the man in the video had a connection to my wife that went back much further than I could have imagined. A connection that started long before I ever met her. And once I learned the truth, I wished I had never plugged that flash drive into my laptop. I spent the rest of the afternoon sitting in front of my laptop. The video was paused on the last frame. Emily's face. His face. That smile. I must have watched those 38 seconds 50 times. Every time I noticed something new, a detail, a gesture, a look, things I wished I had never seen. By the time Emily came home, I had already made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I needed facts. If there was one thing I had learned in life, it was that emotions made people stupid. And right now, I was drowning in emotions. Anger, confusion, fear, humiliation. So I forced myself to act normal. When I heard her car pull into the driveway, I quickly removed the flash drive and put it in my desk drawer. A minute later, she entered the house. "Hey," she said. "Hey." She smiled, the same smile I had loved for years. Now, it felt different, like I was looking at a stranger wearing my wife's face. "You okay?" she asked. "Sure." "You look tired." "Long day." She nodded. "Mine too." Then, she walked into the kitchen, as if nothing had happened, as if my entire world hadn't just collapsed a few hours earlier. I watched her from the hallway. How many lies had she told me? How long had she been doing this? Was she thinking about him right now? The questions kept multiplying. That evening was torture. We ate dinner together. We watched television. We talked about completely normal things. Her students, a neighbor's new fence, a movie she wanted to see. Meanwhile, all I could think about was the video. Every time she looked at her phone, I noticed. Every time she smiled at a message, I noticed. Every time she disappeared into another room, I noticed. Around 10 o'clock, she went upstairs. "I think I'm going to sleep." "Okay." She kissed me, the same way she always did. Then she disappeared into the bedroom. I sat alone in the living room for another hour, thinking, planning, trying not to lose my mind. Eventually, I opened my laptop again. If I couldn't identify the man directly, maybe I could identify him through Emily. I started with social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, anything. At first, I found nothing unusual. Most of her accounts were private. Her friend lists were hidden. Her photos were normal. Then I noticed something strange. A profile that repeatedly appeared in her likes. A man named Marcus Reed. The name meant nothing to me. His profile picture showed him standing next to a motorcycle. Tall, athletic, black, short hair. My pulse immediately increased. The photo wasn't clear enough to prove anything, but there was a resemblance. I clicked his profile. Most posts were public. Fitness, travel, cars, nothing suspicious. Then I found something interesting. About 8 months earlier, Emily had liked one of his photos. Then another. Then another. Dozens of them. Not comments, not conversations, just likes, but enough to catch my attention. I kept scrolling. The pattern continued. The more I looked, the worse I felt. At midnight, I finally closed the laptop. I needed sleep. Instead, I spent most of the night staring at the ceiling. The next morning, I woke up before Emily. She was still asleep. For several minutes, I simply watched her. This woman had shared my life for 8 years. Birthdays, vacations, family dinners, funerals, Christmas mornings, everything. How could I not know what was happening? How could someone hide something this big? Eventually, she woke up. She smiled when she saw me. Morning, morning. She stretched. Then she checked her phone. Immediately. Before even getting out of bed, my stomach twisted. A message appeared. I couldn't see the content, but I saw her smile. Just for a second. Then she locked the screen. Everything okay? I asked casually. Yeah. Who was that? She hesitated. Only for a moment. But I noticed. Student. Student. The answer came too quickly. Too smoothly. Almost rehearsed. I nodded. Got it. Half an hour later, she left for work. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I grabbed my keys. For the first time in my marriage, I followed my wife. The entire drive felt surreal, like I was watching someone else's life. I stayed several cars behind, careful, patient, trying not to be noticed. Emily followed her normal route at first. She drove to the driving school office, parked, entered the building. Nothing unusual. I waited. 30 minutes later, she came back outside. A young student got into the car. They drove away. A normal lesson. Then another lesson. And another. For several hours, everything appeared completely ordinary. I began feeling ridiculous. Maybe the video was old. Maybe it had happened years ago. Maybe. Then around 3 in the afternoon, something changed. Emily finished a lesson near a shopping center. The student exited the vehicle. Instead of returning to the driving school, she drove toward the north side of town. I followed. My heart pounded harder with every turn. 10 minutes later, she entered a small parking lot behind a coffee shop. She parked. Then she waited. I parked across the street, far enough away to avoid attention. 5 minutes passed. 10 minutes. Then, another vehicle arrived. A black SUV. The driver stepped out. Even from a distance, I knew immediately. It was him, the man from the video. I felt every muscle in my body tense. He approached Emily's car, opened the passenger door, got inside. My vision narrowed. I couldn't hear anything, couldn't think. I simply stared. The two remained inside the vehicle, talking, laughing, sometimes serious, sometimes smiling. The meeting lasted nearly 40 minutes. 40 minutes that felt like 40 years. Finally, the SUV driver exited. Before leaving, he leaned toward Emily. I couldn't see clearly through the windshield, but I knew exactly what happened. The same movement, the same closeness, the same thing I had seen in the video. Then he walked away. Emily drove off. I remained frozen in place, staring at the parking lot, trying to process what I had just witnessed. The affair was real. Not old, not finished, not a misunderstanding. Real. A strange numbness settled over me. Oddly enough, the uncertainty had been worse. Now I knew. At least partially. The question was no longer whether my wife was cheating. The question was why, and who exactly this man was, because something about the situation didn't add up. 40 minutes in a parking lot? In the middle of a workday? No attempt to hide? No hotel? No secret apartment? Just conversations. Meetings. Phone calls. Something felt off, like I was only seeing part of the story. That evening, I followed another instinct. I searched for Marcus Reed again, this time more carefully, and that's when I found something that made my blood run cold. An old photograph, buried deep inside a charity event album from almost 10 years ago. The image showed several volunteers standing together. I immediately recognized two faces. The first was Marcus. The second was Emily. The photo had been taken 2 years before she met me. They already knew each other. And judging by the way they stood together, they knew each other very well. I stared at the screen. A new question entered my mind. What if Marcus wasn't a recent affair? What if he had been part of Emily's life all along? And if that was true, what else had she been hiding from me? I was about to find out, because the next discovery would be far worse than the video itself. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same image. Emily and Marcus sitting together in that car, laughing, talking, looking completely comfortable with each other. The old photo I had found bothered me even more. 10 years old. Taken before Emily and I had ever met. Before our first date. Before our engagement. Before our wedding. Marcus wasn't some random guy she met recently. He was part of her past. Maybe a very important part. And somehow I had never heard his name. Not once. The next morning, I called in sick. I wasn't sick. At least, not physically. I just couldn't focus on work anymore. My marriage was falling apart, and I needed answers. As soon as Emily left for work, I sat down at my computer and started digging. I searched every version of her name I could think of. Old social media accounts, archived pages, volunteer organizations, community events, anything. For hours, I found almost nothing useful. Then around noon, I got lucky. An old community center website still had archived photos from local charity projects. Most people would never have looked through them. I spent nearly an hour scrolling through hundreds of images. Then I found Emily. Again. And Marcus. Again. Different event. Different year. Same two people. Standing together. Smiling together. Sometimes working side by side. Sometimes sitting together during breaks. The photos stretched across almost 3 years. 3 years. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a friendship. Or something more. I opened every image. Studied every detail. The more I looked, the worse I felt. They always seemed close. Closer than friends. At least from my perspective. Then I found a caption. Just one sentence. It changed everything. The photo showed a volunteer fundraising event. The caption read, "Special thanks to Marcus Reed and Emily Carter for organizing this year's youth driving program." Emily Carter, her maiden name. The photo was dated 11 years ago. I leaned back in my chair. Youth driving program. Driving. Even back then. That immediately caught my attention. Emily had always loved teaching people how to drive. Apparently Marcus had been involved too. Maybe that was how they met. But why had she never mentioned him? Not once in 8 years? That wasn't normal. Even if he was just an old friend. Especially if he was just an old friend. The more I thought about it, the stranger it became. I decided to try another approach. Instead of searching Emily, I searched Marcus. That led me to something unexpected. A local newspaper article, 12 years old. The article wasn't about him directly. It was about a community driving safety project. Marcus appeared in one of the photos. Emily appeared too. I started reading. Halfway through the article, I noticed a familiar name. David Carter. I froze. Carter. Emily's last name before marriage. I kept reading. According to the article, David Carter had launched the program years earlier. Several volunteers helped run it, including Emily, including Marcus. I immediately searched for David Carter. A few results appeared. Most were old. The first thing I learned was that David Carter had died 13 years ago. Emily's father. I already knew that. He had passed away before I met her. What I didn't know was how closely Marcus had apparently worked with him. For the next hour, I followed every lead I could find. The picture slowly became clearer. Marcus wasn't just connected to Emily. He had known her father, worked with him, spent years around her family, long before I entered her life. A strange feeling settled over me. Something wasn't right. If Marcus had been such an important part of her past, why had she erased him from every conversation? Why pretend he didn't exist? Unless she was hiding more than an affair. That possibility terrified me. Around 4 p.m, I made a decision. I was going to search the house. I hated the idea. It felt wrong. But at this point, trust was already dead. I started in our bedroom. Closets, drawers, storage boxes, old paperwork, nothing. Then I remembered something. The attic. We rarely went up there. Mostly because it was packed with old boxes, family photos, school records, things nobody touched anymore. I climbed the ladder and switched on the light. Dust filled the air. For nearly an hour, I searched through forgotten memories. Old tax documents, holiday decorations, college textbooks. Then I found a box labeled, Emily, Personal. My heart immediately sped up. I opened it. Inside were dozens of items, letters, photographs, certificates, scrapbooks, the history of her life before me. I sat on the floor and started looking through everything. Most of it was innocent. School photos, birthday cards, family pictures. Then I found an old photo album. The cover was worn from age. I opened it. The first pages showed Emily in her early 20s. Friends, volunteer events, family gatherings. Then I saw him. Marcus. Again. Photo after photo. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with Emily. Sometimes with groups. Sometimes not. I turned another page. My stomach dropped. There was a picture of Emily and Marcus standing together beside a lake. No group, no volunteers, just the two of them. His arm rested around her shoulders. She was smiling. Not a friendly smile. Not the kind of smile people use for coworkers. A different smile. An intimate smile. The smile of someone in love. I stared at the photograph. My hands began shaking. Then I turned the photo over. Someone had written on the back. The handwriting was Emily's. I recognized it instantly. The message was short. Only 4 words. Summer with Marcus, 2014. 2014. 3 years before I met her. I closed my eyes. For a moment, I felt physically sick. Marcus wasn't just an old friend. He wasn't just an old colleague. He wasn't just a volunteer partner. He had been her boyfriend. Maybe her first serious love. Maybe more. Suddenly, everything made sense. The secrecy, the hidden meetings, the missing stories, the strange behavior. But another question immediately appeared. If Marcus had been her boyfriend years ago, why were they seeing each other now? And why had she hidden his existence completely? I continued searching. The answer came 15 minutes later, buried inside a folder of old documents. At first, I almost missed it. Just a folded piece of paper between several photographs. I opened it. The moment I read the first line, my entire body went cold. It was a letter addressed to Emily, written by Marcus. The date was 8 years old, only a few months before Emily met me. I read the first paragraph, then the second, then the third. My breathing became shallow because the letter revealed something I never expected. Marcus hadn't left Emily. Emily had left Marcus. Not because she stopped loving him, not because they fought, not because of betrayal. According to the letter, Marcus had disappeared, without warning, without explanation, for nearly 2 years, completely vanished from her life, then suddenly reappeared. By that time, Emily had already met me. The letter ended with a sentence I will never forget. I know you have someone else now, But I never stopped loving you. I read it 3 times, then a 4th. My mind struggled to process it. The timeline suddenly looked very different, much more complicated, much more dangerous. Because if Marcus had returned after disappearing for years, and if Emily had secretly stayed in contact with him, then maybe this wasn't just an affair. Maybe it was unfinished business, an old love story that never truly ended. And deep down, I feared something else. What if I wasn't Emily's first choice? What if I had simply arrived while Marcus was gone? That thought hurt more than anything. But the biggest shock was still waiting for me, because hidden beneath that letter was another document, one that contained a secret neither Emily nor Marcus had ever told me. A secret that would explain everything and destroy what little trust I still had left. For several seconds, I simply stared at the document. My hands felt strangely heavy. The attic was silent, except for the sound of rain tapping against the roof. The paper looked old, folded multiple times, important enough to keep, hidden enough that nobody would accidentally find it, including me. I unfolded it carefully. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. The page contained official stamps, signatures, dates, names. Then my eyes focused on the title, Confidential Mediation Agreement. I frowned. What was this? I started reading. The document referred to a legal dispute from years earlier. A disagreement involving a nonprofit organization, the same youth driving program where Emily and Marcus had volunteered. Several names appeared throughout the paperwork. Marcus, Emily, David Carter, other volunteers. At first it seemed completely unrelated to anything. Then I reached a section that made me stop. A paragraph described an accident. A serious one. An accident that had occurred during a community driving event more than 10 years ago. According to the report, a teenage participant had been injured. Not killed, but seriously injured. The organization had nearly been sued. The incident had almost destroyed the program. I kept reading. Marcus had been present. Emily had been present. David Carter had been responsible for supervising the event. The entire case had eventually been settled privately. No criminal charges, no public scandal, no media attention. The matter disappeared, officially. But something about the document felt wrong. I couldn't explain it. A feeling, an instinct. I continued reading. Near the bottom of the final page was a handwritten note, not part of the official agreement. Someone had written it later. The handwriting belonged to Emily. I recognized it immediately. The note said, "Dad never forgave himself. Marcus never forgave himself either." I stared at the sentence. Again and again. The words felt important. Very important. But I didn't yet understand why. I searched the box for additional information. 5 minutes later, I found another envelope. This one contained newspaper clippings, photos, letters, personal notes. The deeper I looked, the clearer the story became. 10 years earlier, Marcus had been helping with the driving program. One day, during a supervised training event, a teenager lost control of a vehicle. The crash seriously injured another participant. Nobody died, but several lives changed forever. David Carter blamed himself. Marcus blamed himself. Emily watched everything happen. According to several letters, the event devastated all 3 of them. Months later, David Carter's health began declining. A year later, he died. Not because of the accident. But Emily apparently believed the guilt contributed to it. I sat quietly for a long time. The affair suddenly felt connected to something much larger. Something emotional. Something buried in the past. Still, none of it explained the video, or the meetings, or the lies. Then, I discovered the final envelope. The envelope that changed everything. It had no label, no date, nothing. Inside was a single photograph. I looked at it, then I looked again. At first, I thought I was imagining things. The photo showed Emily, Marcus, and a little girl, maybe 3 years old. The 3 of them stood together in a park, smiling, looking like a family. My heart nearly stopped. I turned the photograph over. A date was written on the back. 9 years ago. 9 years. Before Emily met me, before our relationship even began, I examined the picture more closely. The little girl sat on Marcus's shoulders. Emily stood beside them. The child looked happy, comfortable, connected to both of them. Questions exploded inside my head. Who was she? A niece? A family friend? A volunteer's child? I searched the envelope again. A folded paper slipped onto the floor. I picked it up, opened it. Read the first line, then the second, then the third. My entire world tilted. The document was a birth certificate. The child's name was Sophia Reed. Father, Marcus Reed. Mother, Emily Carter. I couldn't breathe. I simply sat there, frozen, reading the same words over and over. Mother, Emily Carter. Father, Marcus Reed. My wife had a daughter, and I had never known. Not once. Not in 8 years. Not during our engagement. Not during our wedding. Not during countless conversations about family. Nothing. She had hidden an entire child from me. An entire human being. I felt physically ill. I looked back at the photograph. The smiling little girl. Sophia, Emily's daughter. Marcus's daughter. The secret was bigger than an affair. Much bigger. I searched frantically through the rest of the box. Within minutes, I found more documents. Medical records. School paperwork. Letters. Photographs. The story slowly emerged. Years ago, Emily and Marcus had been together. They had a daughter, Sophia. Then, something happened. The details weren't entirely clear. But shortly after the accident involving the driving program, Marcus disappeared. For reasons I still didn't understand. Emily raised Sophia alone. Then, tragedy struck again. A hospital document provided the answer. Sophia died from a rare illness when she was 5 years old. I felt my stomach twist. The room suddenly seemed smaller, hotter, harder to breathe in. I sat there, staring at the records. The little girl in the photograph was gone, dead. For years, Emily had lost a child, and somehow she had never told me, never even hinted at it. Not once. I couldn't understand it. How do you marry someone and never tell them something like that? How? I spent nearly an hour reading every document. By the end, one thing became clear. The loss had destroyed both Emily and Marcus. Several letters described depression, therapy, isolation, grief. Marcus eventually disappeared completely from her life. Emily met me later, started over, built a new future. At least that's what it looked like. Until Marcus returned. Suddenly, the meetings made more sense. The secrecy made more sense. Even the emotional connection made more sense. They shared something unimaginable. A child, a loss, a history neither of them could ever erase. But despite understanding it better, I still felt betrayed. Because Emily had chosen to hide everything. Not just Marcus, not just the affair, everything. The relationship, the child, the tragedy, the grief, the truth. And now I needed answers directly from her. No more investigations, no more hidden documents, no more assumptions. That evening, I waited for Emily to come home. The box sat beside me in the living room. The photographs, the birth certificate, the letters, everything. I wasn't angry anymore, at least not the way I had been. Now I felt something worse. I felt empty. Around 6:30, I heard her car pull into the driveway. A moment later, the front door opened. Emily walked inside. Then she froze because she immediately saw the box, saw the photographs, saw the documents spread across the table. And in that instant, before either of us spoke a single word, I knew she understood. The secret was finally out, and judging by the look on her face, the truth about Marcus was only the beginning. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Emily stood near the front door. I sat on the couch. The documents were spread across the coffee table between us. The birth certificate, the photographs, the letters, All the secrets she had hidden for years. The silence felt endless. Then Emily slowly closed the door behind her. Her face had gone pale, not because she was caught, because she knew exactly what I had found. She looked at the birth certificate first, then the photograph of Sophia. Finally, she looked at me. I had never seen that expression before. Fear, sadness, and something else. Relief, as if she had spent years carrying a weight she could no longer hold. "How much do you know?" she asked quietly. I laughed, not because anything was funny, because I didn't know what else to do. "Honestly," I said, "I don't know anymore." She didn't answer. I pointed toward the documents. "You had a daughter." Her eyes immediately filled with tears. "You never told me." She looked away. "You never told me about Marcus." Still silence. "You never told me any of this." A tear rolled down her cheek. For years, I had imagined what a confrontation like this would look like. Anger, screaming, accusations. Instead, I felt exhausted, completely exhausted. Emily slowly sat in the chair opposite me. For several moments, she simply stared at Sophia's photograph. Then she whispered, "I wanted to tell you." I shook my head. "No." Her eyes lifted toward mine. I did. "No, Emily." I pointed at the documents. "You had 8 years." The words hit her hard. I could see it, because they were true. 8 years. Thousands of opportunities. She lowered her gaze. "I know." Another long silence followed. Finally, I asked the question that had been haunting me all week. "Are you sleeping with Marcus?" She immediately looked at me. "No." The answer came without hesitation, without uncertainty, without thinking. Just no. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception, looking for anything. "What about the video?" She closed her eyes. For a moment, she looked defeated. Then she nodded. "I know what video you're talking about." That surprised me. "You know it exists?" "Yes." My stomach tightened. "Then explain it." Emily took a deep breath. The story that followed changed everything. According to her, the video was recorded almost a year earlier. Not recently, not last month, not last week, a year. Marcus and Emily had met in the driving school car after one of her lessons. They were talking about Sophia, about old memories, about grief, about guilt. The conversation became emotional, very emotional. Eventually, Marcus kissed her. For a few seconds, she kissed him back. Then she stopped it. Immediately. The video ended before that part. I remembered the recording. 38 seconds. No context. No ending. Just the kiss. She continued speaking. "The person who recorded it wasn't me." "Then who?" She hesitated. "A student." "What?" "A student accidentally left a phone recording inside the car." I stared at her. The explanation sounded ridiculous, yet strangely possible. Driving instructors often dealt with cameras, dash cams, phones, recording devices. Emily wiped tears from her face. The video wasn't supposed to exist. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Part of me wanted to reject everything she said. Another part recognized genuine pain in her voice. I asked the next question. "Why are you still meeting him?" That one hit harder. Emily looked down at Sophia's photograph. For a long time, she said nothing. Then she finally answered. "Because he's the only person who remembers her the way I do." The room fell silent again. I couldn't respond. She continued. "When Sophia died, everyone moved on." Her voice cracked. "My parents eventually accepted it. My friends moved on. The world moved on." Another tear fell. But Marcus and I never did. I looked at the photograph. The smiling little girl. The child I never knew existed. The child Emily never stopped mourning. The child Marcus never stopped mourning. Suddenly I understood something. The connection between them wasn't built on romance anymore. It was built on loss. A bond formed through pain. The kind of bond most people never experience. Emily continued speaking. "Every year on Sophia's birthday, we meet. Every year, on the day she died, we meet. Sometimes we meet when things become difficult. She looked directly at me. Because nobody else understands. I wanted to argue. I wanted to stay angry. But the truth was complicated. Far more complicated than a simple affair. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Why didn't you tell me? Emily broke completely. The tears came instantly. Not polite tears. Not controlled tears. Years of pain pouring out at once. Because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Everything. Her voice trembled. I was afraid you'd look at me differently. I was afraid you'd see me as damaged. I was afraid you'd think I wasn't over Marcus. I remained silent. Because there was some truth in that last statement. Emily noticed. She nodded slowly. That's why I never told you. The honesty hurt, but it also felt real. Then she revealed something I never expected. When I met you, I was trying to survive. I frowned. What do you mean? I wasn't looking for love. She stared at Sophia's picture. I wasn't looking for anything. I was broken. The room felt very quiet. Emily continued. You gave me a second life. For the first time that evening, she looked directly into my eyes. I loved you. Not love. Loved. Past tense. I immediately noticed it. Apparently, she realized it too. Because she quickly corrected herself. I love you. The damage was already done. A small chill ran through me. I leaned forward. Do you still love Marcus? The question hung in the air. Emily closed her eyes. For a long time, she didn't answer. That alone terrified me. Finally, she spoke. I don't know. The words hit harder than any confession. Harder than the video. Harder than the lies. Because they were honest. Painfully honest. Not yes. Not no. I don't know. The room became silent again. Outside, darkness settled over the neighborhood. Neither of us moved. Neither of us knew what came next. Then, Emily reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and placed it on the table. What are you doing? She swallowed. Showing you something. Her hands shook slightly. She opened a conversation. Marcus. Hundreds of messages. Years of messages. My stomach dropped. But then she handed me the phone. Read the last one. I looked at the screen. The most recent message had arrived only 3 hours earlier. It was from Marcus. The message was short. Very short. Only one sentence. But the moment I read it, everything changed again. Because Marcus had written, I'm leaving tomorrow. This is goodbye. I stared at the screen, confused. Emily watched me carefully. He got a job overseas, she said quietly. He leaves tomorrow morning. I looked back at the message, then at her. Then at the message again. For the first time since finding the video, I realized there was still a huge part of the story I didn't understand. And Marcus himself was the only person who could explain it. The problem was, by this time tomorrow, he would be gone. Maybe forever. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Emily's words again. I don't know. 3 simple words. 3 words that hurt more than a direct confession. Not because they proved she loved Marcus. Because they proved she wasn't sure. And uncertainty can be more painful than the truth. Around 2 a.m, I got out of bed and walked downstairs. The house was dark, silent. Max was asleep near the couch. I sat alone in the kitchen, thinking. For days, I had imagined Marcus as a villain. The man who stole my wife. The man who destroyed my marriage. The man from the video. But now, things look different. Not simpler, just different. The story wasn't black and white. Nobody had forced Emily to lie. Nobody had forced her to hide Sophia. Nobody had forced her to keep Marcus in her life. Those choices belonged to her. Still, Marcus wasn't just some random guy who appeared one day. He was part of a tragedy that happened long before I entered the picture. Part of a life Emily had buried. A life she never shared with me. By sunrise, I had made my decision. I needed to meet him. Not through photos, not through videos, not through messages. Face to face, I wanted the truth. And if Marcus was leaving the country tomorrow, This was my last chance. The next morning, Emily gave me an address, a small cafe near the river. Marcus would be there around 10. She didn't try to stop me. She didn't try to protect him. She simply handed me the address and said, "If you're going to do this, listen to everything." Then she left the room. At exactly 9:55, I parked outside the cafe. My heart pounded against my ribs. Part of me wanted to leave. Part of me wanted to walk away and never see him. But I had come too far. I walked inside. The cafe wasn't crowded. Maybe 10 customers, a few students, an older couple, a businessman working on a laptop. Then I saw him, Marcus, sitting alone near the window. He looked exactly like I remembered from the video. Tall, athletic, calm. But there was something else now, something I hadn't expected. He looked tired, not physically, emotionally, like a man carrying a weight he couldn't put down. When he saw me, he nodded, almost as if he had been expecting this meeting for years. I walked over. Neither of us offered a handshake. Neither of us smiled. I sat across from him. For several seconds, we simply stared at each other. Finally, Marcus spoke. "You found out." Not a question, a statement. "Yeah." He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry." The apology surprised me. I wasn't expecting that. Not from him. Not immediately. I crossed my arms. "Sorry for what?" His eyes dropped briefly. "For all of it." Not exactly a detailed answer. I leaned forward. "Let's start with something simple." He nodded. "Okay. Did you sleep with my wife?" Marcus held my gaze. No. No hesitation. No nervousness. The same certainty Emily had shown. I immediately noticed it. The answers matched. Exactly. That didn't automatically make them true, but it mattered. I continued. "Did you love her?" His expression changed. The answer was obvious, before he even spoke. "Yes." A painful honesty filled the space between us. "Do you still love her?" Marcus looked out the window, toward the river, toward the gray sky. When he finally answered, his voice was quiet. I never stopped. The words hit hard. Even though I expected them, I felt anger rising. But I forced myself to stay calm. Then why leave? That question seemed to surprise him. He looked back at me. For a moment, he almost smiled. Not because anything was funny, because the answer seemed obvious to him. "Because she chose you." The simplicity of the statement caught me off guard. I frowned. Marcus continued. "When I came back, she was already with you." He shrugged slightly. "That was it. That's not what it looks like." "No." He nodded. "I know." For the first time, there was genuine sadness in his eyes. "I know exactly how it looks." The waitress brought coffee. Neither of us touched it. The conversation continued. Slowly, carefully, like two men walking through a minefield. Eventually, I asked the question that had haunted me since finding the documents. "Why did you disappear?" Marcus became very still. The change was immediate. His jaw tightened. His eyes lowered. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he finally spoke. "Sophia." Just one word. The name changed everything. Marcus stared at his untouched coffee. "I couldn't survive it." I remained silent. He continued. "When she got sick, I thought I could handle it." His voice was steady. Too steady. The voice of someone who had repeated the story many times in his head. "I thought I could stay strong. I thought I could support Emily." His hands tightened around the coffee cup. I failed. The words came out almost like a confession. I didn't interrupt. When Sophia died, something broke. His eyes remained fixed on the table. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I stopped functioning. He swallowed hard. I became someone I didn't recognize. The cafe suddenly felt very quiet. I started drinking. His voice grew softer. Then more drinking. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I lost everything. For the first time, I saw genuine pain beneath his calm exterior. Not performance. Not manipulation. Pain. The kind that never completely disappears. I left because I thought Emily would be better without me. I stared at him. She didn't see it that way. A sad smile appeared. No. He looked down. She hated me for leaving. I couldn't blame her. Honestly, I wasn't sure I would have acted differently. Maybe that's what scared me. Marcus continued. For years, I stayed away. When I finally came back, everything had changed. You had changed. She had changed. And then she met you. I leaned back, trying to process everything. The story felt tragically human. Messy, painful, complicated. No villains. Just broken people making terrible decisions. Then Marcus said something unexpected. Something that completely shifted my perspective. She never stopped talking about you. I blinked. What? Marcus laughed quietly. The first genuine laugh of the conversation. Daniel. He shook his head. You have no idea. I stared at him, confused. Marcus looked directly at me. Every time we met, she talked about you. That wasn't what I expected. Not even close. I said nothing. Marcus continued. Your vacations. Your dog. Your stupid movie nights. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Almost. She talked about all of it. He paused, then added, she was proud of you. The words landed heavily because they felt genuine, not rehearsed, not strategic, just true. Marcus sighed. I knew she loved you. The statement lingered between us. Then I asked the question I wasn't sure I wanted answered. If that's true. Marcus nodded. He already knew what I was about to ask. Then why keep meeting her? For the first time during the entire conversation, Marcus looked genuinely uncomfortable. His answer came slowly. Because letting go isn't easy. I understood immediately. Far more than I wanted to. Marcus glanced toward the window again, then checked his watch. His flight left in a few hours. Time was running out. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a small envelope, and placed it on the table. Between us, I stared at it. What is that? Marcus looked at the envelope for several seconds. Then back at me. Something Emily never had the courage to show you. My pulse quickened. The envelope looked old. Very old. Worn around the edges. Protected for years. Marcus pushed it toward me. I looked at him. What is it? His answer came quietly. A letter. From Sophia. I froze. The world seemed to stop moving. Marcus lowered his eyes. She wrote it before she died. My hands suddenly felt cold. Neither of us spoke. The envelope remained on the table, waiting, and somehow deep down, I already knew that whatever was inside that letter would change everything once again. For several seconds, I couldn't move. The envelope sat on the table between us. A letter from a little girl who had died years ago. A little girl I had never known existed until yesterday. A little girl who, in some strange way, had already changed my life. Marcus didn't touch the envelope again. He simply sat back and waited. Finally, I picked it up. The paper felt fragile, old, protected for a very long time. The handwriting on the front wasn't adult handwriting. It was clearly a child's. Messy, uneven, innocent. My throat tightened. Slowly, I opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper, covered in colorful marker, small hearts, stars, tiny drawings. The kind of things children add when they write letters. I unfolded it carefully. Then, I started reading. Dear Mommy and Daddy, if you are reading this, it means I am probably in heaven. Don't be sad. I don't want you to be sad. My vision blurred immediately. I blinked several times and continued. The doctors always look sad when they talk to you. I know what that means. I hear more than you think. Mommy cries when she thinks I'm asleep. Daddy cries in the car. I know both of you are scared. I swallowed hard. Across the table, Marcus stared out the window, giving me privacy, giving me space. I continued reading. If I go to heaven, you have to promise me something. You have to stay together. No fighting. No being mad. No blaming each other. None of this is your fault. My chest felt heavy. The words were simple, childlike, yet somehow devastating. Daddy, Don't leave Mommy. Mommy, don't let Daddy leave. I love you both. And I don't want either of you to be alone. I stopped reading. For several seconds, I simply stared at the page. A strange sadness settled over me, the kind that doesn't arrive all at once, the kind that slowly fills every corner of your mind. Eventually, I continued. If I could make one wish, it would be for both of you to be happy. Even if I'm not there, you deserve to be happy. Promise me. Love, Sophia. The letter ended there. Nothing dramatic, nothing shocking. Just the final wish of a child who loved her parents. I slowly lowered the paper. The cafe seemed unusually quiet. For a long time, neither Marcus nor I spoke. Finally, I looked up. That's the secret? Marcus shook his head. No. His voice was calm, almost sad. The secret isn't the letter. My stomach tightened. Then what is it? Marcus looked at me carefully, as if deciding whether to continue. Then he sighed. The secret is what happened afterward. I waited. Marcus rubbed his hands together. A nervous habit, apparently. The first sign of nervousness I'd seen all morning. When Sophia died, we tried. He glanced toward the letter. We really tried. I nodded. Neither of us needed further explanation. The promise, the wish, the attempt to stay together. Marcus continued. For almost a year. Then, he laughed bitterly. A terrible year. His eyes lowered. We weren't helping each other anymore. We were drowning together. I understood. More than I wanted to. Marcus stared at the table. Every room reminded us of her. Every photograph. Every toy. Every birthday. Every word sounded painful, heavy, like something he'd carried for years. Then he continued. Eventually, we became two people who only knew how to hurt. The honesty in his voice was impossible to ignore. We blamed ourselves. We blamed life. We blamed fate. His eyes briefly met mine. And sometimes we blamed each other. The room fell silent again. Then Marcus said something that surprised me. The breakup wasn't the worst part. What was? His expression hardened. The guilt. I frowned. What guilt? Marcus looked away, toward the river again, toward memories only he could see. Then he finally answered. Emily blamed herself for Sophia's illness. I stared at him. Why? Marcus hesitated. For several seconds, he seemed unsure. Then he spoke. Because the illness was genetic. My heart skipped. Marcus continued. The condition came from Emily's side of the family. The pieces started moving together, slowly, painfully. Emily's father, the documents, the guilt, the secrecy. Marcus nodded slightly, as if reading my thoughts. Her father carried the same gene. I remembered the papers I had found, the references to David Carter, the guilt he carried, the emotional burden. Marcus continued. When Sophia was diagnosed, Emily convinced herself it was her fault. That's ridiculous. I know. His answer came instantly. But grief isn't logical. I couldn't argue with that. Marcus took a deep breath. After Sophia died, Emily stopped talking about it. I immediately believed that. Completely. It was easier for her. Easier than what? Marcus gave a sad smile. Easier than remembering. The words hit me hard. Because suddenly everything made sense. Not the lies, not the secrecy, but the motivation, the reason behind them. Emily hadn't buried her past because she didn't care. She buried it because she cared too much. Because remembering hurt. Because speaking about Sophia hurt. Because every conversation reopened an old wound. Marcus continued. When she met you, she wanted a fresh start. I remained silent. Not because she didn't love Sophia. His voice became firmer. Never think that. I nodded. I won't. Marcus relaxed slightly. Then he said something unexpected. She was terrified of losing you. I frowned. Why? The answer came immediately. Because she thought if you knew everything, you'd leave. The simplicity of the statement made it hurt even more. Maybe because there was some truth in it. Would I have left? 8 years ago? If a woman I had just started dating told me she had lost a child and still carried enormous emotional scars, honestly, I didn't know. Maybe, maybe not. The uncertainty bothered me. Marcus looked at his watch again. His flight was getting closer. Soon this conversation would end, maybe forever. Then he surprised me one last time. He reached into his wallet, pulled out a photograph, and handed it to me. I looked down. It was a recent picture, only a few months old. Emily sat on a park bench, alone, holding flowers. A small memorial plaque stood nearby. The name on the plaque was obvious. Sophia. I stared at the photograph. Marcus watched quietly. She goes every month. I looked up. He nodded. Sometimes more. I swallowed. For years, I thought I knew my wife. Yet there was an entire world inside her that I had never seen. An entire history. An entire grief. An entire life. Then Marcus stood up. The meeting was ending. He placed some money on the table for the coffee neither of us had touched. I remained seated, still processing everything. Marcus looked down at me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "Take care of her." Simple words, nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just a request. One man to another. I looked at him. What happens now? Marcus smiled faintly, the smile of someone finally letting go. I get on a plane. He adjusted his jacket. And hopefully she gets her life back. With that, he turned and walked away, toward the cafe door, toward the next chapter of his life. I watched him leave, and for the first time since finding the video, I wasn't thinking about Marcus anymore. I was thinking about Emily, because now I understood her secrets. But understanding wasn't the same thing as forgiveness. And when I returned home that evening, I would have to decide whether our marriage still had a future. The drive home felt longer than usual. The roads were familiar. The traffic was normal. The weather hadn't changed. Yet everything felt different. For nearly a week, I had been chasing answers. The video, Marcus, the meetings, the lies, the secrets. Now I finally had most of the truth, or at least enough of it, and somehow I felt more exhausted than relieved. I kept thinking about Sophia's letter, the childish handwriting, the simple words, the wish she left behind. Don't be alone. Such a simple sentence, yet it had shaped the lives of two people for more than a decade. By the time I reached the house, the sun was beginning to set. The golden light covered the neighborhood. Everything looked peaceful, normal, as if nothing had happened. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment, trying to prepare myself. Then I went inside. Emily was sitting in the living room, waiting. She looked nervous, more nervous than I had ever seen her. The documents were gone. The photographs were gone. The table was empty. Only Emily remained. And years of unspoken truth between us. When I entered, she immediately stood. "Did you see him?" "Yeah." Her eyes searched my face, trying to understand what happened, trying to predict what I would say next. I placed Sophia's letter on the table. Emily froze. The moment she saw it, tears filled her eyes. She recognized it immediately. Slowly, she sat down again. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Then she whispered, "He gave you that." It wasn't a question. "No." I shook my head. "Sophia gave it to me." Emily covered her mouth. A tear rolled down her cheek, then another. Soon, she was crying silently, not dramatically, not loudly, just quietly. The way people cry when they are carrying years of pain. I sat across from her, watching, waiting. Eventually, she looked up. "I wanted to show you that letter so many times." I nodded. "I believe you." The answer surprised both of us. For the first time in days, there was no anger in my voice, only sadness. Emily stared at the floor. I was ashamed. Ashamed of what? Everything. The answer came immediately. My past. Marcus. Sophia. The mistakes. The grief. She wiped her eyes. "I wanted you to see the best version of me." I understood, even though part of me still hurt. I wasn't trying to lie forever. The words sounded honest. I just kept postponing it. I nodded slowly. That I understood too. Small secrets become bigger secrets, then bigger still, until they become impossible to tell. Neither of us spoke for a while. Finally, I asked, "Is he gone?" Emily nodded. He texted me from the airport. A strange feeling settled over me. Not happiness, not victory, just closure. One chapter ending, quietly, without drama, without confrontation. Marcus was gone. The triangle was broken. Now only Emily and I remained, and the damage between us. The next hour became the most honest conversation of our marriage. No secrets, no hiding, no half-truths. Just honesty. Sometimes painful honesty, the kind most couples avoid. Emily told me everything. About meeting Marcus, about falling in love, about Sophia, about the illness, about losing her, about the depression that followed, about the years she spent trying to rebuild herself. There were moments when she couldn't continue speaking, moments when she cried, moments when I did. Because despite everything, I wasn't hearing a story about betrayal anymore. I was hearing a story about survival, a story about grief, a story about someone who had spent years running from her own memories. Then eventually the conversation reached the question both of us feared, the question waiting at the center of everything. What happens now? The room became quiet. Emily looked at me, terrified, because she didn't know the answer. Honestly, neither did I. I stood and walked toward the window. Outside, Max was chasing something in the backyard, completely unaware that two human lives were hanging in the balance. I stared outside for a long time. Then I finally spoke. "You should have told me." Emily nodded immediately. "I know. You should have trusted me." Another nod. "I know. You hurt me." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I know." The silence returned. Then I turned around. I don't know if I can forgive everything. The words visibly hurt her, but she didn't argue. Because they were true. Trust doesn't magically return. Not after years of lies. Not after discovering an entire hidden life. I continued, "But I don't think you're the person I imagined a week ago either." Emily looked confused. I sat down again. "A week ago, I thought I knew exactly what happened." I laughed softly, a tired laugh. "I thought you were having an affair." She lowered her eyes. "I know. I thought Marcus was trying to steal you." Her expression became sad. "I know." I shook my head. The truth was much more complicated. Neither of us spoke. Then I asked the final question, the most important one, the one everything depended on. "Do you want this marriage?" Emily looked up instantly. The answer came before I even finished speaking. Yes. No hesitation. No uncertainty. No doubt. Just yes. For the first time all week, I believed her completely. I studied her face. The tears. The fear. The hope. The exhaustion. Everything. Then I asked, "Even without Marcus?" Emily nodded. "Marcus was my past." Her voice trembled slightly. "But you're my life." The words hung in the air. Neither of us moved. For a moment, the entire world seemed still. Then Emily whispered, "I know I don't deserve another chance." I interrupted gently. "That's not how marriage works." She stared at me, confused. I continued, "Sometimes people deserve a second chance. Sometimes they don't." I looked at Sophia's letter on the table, the colorful stars, the childish handwriting, the wish of a little girl. Then I looked back at Emily. "But that's not the real question." She waited, barely breathing. "The real question is whether we want to build something new." A fresh tear rolled down her cheek. Not sadness this time. Hope. Small, fragile, but real. The following months weren't easy. Not even close. Trust had to be rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, one conversation at a time. Some days were good. Some days were terrible. Sometimes old wounds reopened. Sometimes difficult questions returned. But for the first time, there were no secrets. Sophia became part of our conversations. Part of our home, part of our lives. Not hidden, not erased. Remembered the way she deserved. A year later, Emily and I visited Sophia's memorial together. For the first time, we stood there quietly, holding flowers, holding hands, standing beneath a clear summer sky. Neither of us spoke. Words weren't necessary. Eventually, I looked at the small plaque, at the little girl whose existence had almost destroyed my marriage, and, strangely enough, had also saved it. Because secrets grow in darkness. But truth, no matter how painful, gives people a chance. Not a guarantee, just a chance. As we turned to leave, Emily squeezed my hand. I squeezed hers back. And for the first time in a very long time, the future didn't feel frightening. It felt possible. The end.